The alarm bells rang through the Volani Council chamber like a death song. Ambassador Thelana pressed her four-fingered hands against the cold metal table as red warning lights painted the room in blood-colored shadows. Outside the massive windows, she could see the distant flashes of light that marked the end of another star system. The Krex Empire was coming, and nothing could stop them. "How many ships do they have now?" Thelana asked, though she already knew the answer would bring no comfort. High Counselor Yalman looked up from his datapad with eyes that had lost all hope. His blue skin had turned pale, almost gray. "Our scouts report over 3,000 vessels in their main fleet. They destroyed the Helix defense grid in less than 4 hours." Thelana felt her heart sink. The Helix system had been their strongest military outpost. If it could fall so quickly, then nowhere in Volani space was safe. She looked around the council chamber at the other representatives. Some were crying, others stared at nothing with empty eyes. They all knew what was coming. "We have maybe 6 days before they reach our core worlds," Yalman continued. "Our military says we can maybe delay them for a few more hours, but that's all." The Krex Empire had been sweeping across this sector of the galaxy for 3 years now. They took no prisoners. They made no deals. They simply arrived, destroyed everything, and moved on to the next target. Dozens of civilizations had already fallen to their endless hunger for conquest. Thelana stood up slowly. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to walk to the ancient communication console at the far end of the room. The device was older than anyone in the chamber. It had been built thousands of years ago, back when the galaxy was a much more dangerous place. "What are you doing?" Yalman asked. "I'm going to send the old signal," Thelana said quietly. The entire chamber went silent. Even the crying stopped. Everyone knew about the old signal, but no one had used it for over 3,000 years. It was a relic from the dark times, when young civilizations faced extinction from forces they could not fight alone. "The emergency protocol hasn't been used since the Burning Wars," Yalman said. "No one even knows if anyone still monitors those frequencies." "Then we'll find out," Thelana replied. She activated the console with her personal codes. The machine hummed to life, its ancient systems still working perfectly after all these centuries. The protocol was simple, but powerful. It would broadcast across every known communication frequency, reaching every corner of the galaxy. Any civilization that received it would understand that someone was about to die. Thelana began typing the message. Her hands shook as she worked, but she forced herself to be clear and honest. She explained who they were, where they were located, and what was happening to them. She described the Krex Empire and their unstoppable advance. She asked for any help that anyone could give, though she knew it was probably hopeless. When she finished, she looked at the message one more time. It felt strange to put her entire civilization's last hope into such simple words. Then, she pressed the transmission button. The signal burst out from their world at the speed of light, then faster as it jumped into hyperspace communication networks. Within minutes, it would reach monitoring stations across the galaxy. Most of them would probably ignore it. Others might feel sorry for the Volani but would be too far away to help. A few might even be fighting their own wars against the Krex Empire. But maybe, just maybe, someone would come. Far across the galaxy, in a region that most civilizations considered empty and uninteresting, the signal reached a small monitoring station floating in the darkness between stars. The station looked ordinary from the outside, just another automated listening post. But inside, sophisticated equipment tracked every communication in this part of space. Commander Hyunwoo was drinking his morning coffee when the alert sounded. He had been working at the Deep Space Monitoring Station Harmony for 2 years, and most days were quiet. The occasional merchant ship would pass by, or maybe a scientific expedition would send a routine update. Nothing exciting ever happened out here. But this was different. Hyunwoo set down his coffee cup and walked over to the main communication console. The computer was displaying symbols he had only seen in training exercises. It was the ancient emergency protocol, the kind of message that meant someone was about to be wiped out completely. He opened the message and read it carefully. A species called the Volani was asking for help against something called the HFY Empire. They were located in Sector 847, about 2 weeks' travel from his current position. According to their message, they had maybe a week before their entire civilization was destroyed. Hyunwoo had standing orders for exactly this kind of situation. He opened a secure communication channel and sent the message directly to Fleet, Command on Earth. Then he sent copies to every major Terran outpost within 100 light years. Someone with more authority than him would need to decide what to do about this. The response came back faster than he expected. Within 3 hours, he received a message marked with the highest priority codes. Fleet Command wanted him to monitor the situation and provide regular updates. They also told him that help was already on the way. Hyunwoo wondered what kind of help they could send. The Terran defense fleet was powerful, but they had never fought against this HFY Empire before. From what the Volani described, these aliens had thousands of ships and had already conquered dozens of other civilizations. He opened his secure database and looked up everything the Terrans knew about that region of space. According to their records, it was inhabited mostly by peaceful species with moderate technology levels. None of them should have been able to build the kind of military force that could threaten an entire sector. But clearly, something had changed. Hyunwoo sent another message to Fleet Command, asking for more information about their response plans. The reply was short and came with classification codes he had never seen before. It simply said that the 7th Expeditionary Fleet was being prepared for immediate deployment. He looked up the 7th Expeditionary Fleet in his database. What he found made him sit back in his chair with surprise. It was one of the largest and most powerful fleets in the entire Terran military. Over 200 ships, including some of the newest and most advanced vessels ever built. That seemed like a very strong response to a plea for help from strangers. Most civilizations would send maybe a dozen ships, if they sent anything at all, but Earth was preparing to send a force that could probably conquer a small star system by itself. Hyunwoo wondered what Fleet Command knew that he didn't. He had a feeling that this rescue mission was going to be much more complicated than anyone expected. Captain Minho stood in the briefing room aboard the TSS Defiance, staring at the holographic display that showed the alien distress signal. The blue light from the projection made his face look pale as he read the translation for the 3rd time. Behind him, his senior officers waited quietly for his assessment. "So let me understand this correctly," Minho said slowly. "An unknown alien species sent out an emergency signal asking for help against something called the HFY Empire. This signal uses a protocol that's supposedly 3,000 years old, and Fleet Command wants us to respond with our entire task force." "That's correct, sir," replied Communications Officer Han-na. She had been working on the signal analysis since it arrived 6 hours ago. The Volani Coalition is located in Sector 847. According to their message, they have maybe 5 days before complete destruction. Admiral So Young, who had arrived on the Defiance just an hour earlier, stepped forward. She was the commanding officer of the entire Terran defense fleet, and her presence meant this situation was being taken very seriously at the highest levels. "Captain Minho, I need you to understand something important," So Young said. "According to our galactic databases, Sector 847 should not have any species capable of interstellar communication. The most advanced life forms in that region are supposed to be primitive hunters who just discovered fire." Minho frowned. "Then how did they send an interstellar distress signal?" "That's exactly what makes this interesting," So Young replied. "Either our information is completely wrong, or something major has changed in that sector. Fleet Command believes this could be our first contact with a previously unknown advanced civilization." Hana cleared her throat. "Admiral, there's something else. I've been monitoring Galactic Council communication channels since we received the signal. They're very confused about our response." "What do you mean?" Minho asked. "Well, sir, according to their records, we shouldn't exist either. As far as the Galactic Council knows, Earth is inhabited by a primitive species that just learned to make basic tools. They classify us as Class 3 developing species with no spaceflight capability." Admiral So Young smiled, but it wasn't a happy expression. "That's because we've been very careful to let them think that. For the past 50 years, we've made sure that any alien observation of Earth only sees what we want them to see." Minho felt confused. "But why would we hide our real capabilities?" "Because, Captain, the galaxy is a dangerous place, and sometimes it's better to be underestimated than to be seen as a threat." Fleet Commander Dong Hyun entered the briefing room at that moment, carrying a datapad with new orders. He was one of the most experienced officers in the Terran military, a man who had commanded fleets in battles that officially never happened. "The 7th Expeditionary Fleet is ready for immediate departure," Dong Hyun announced. "We have 237 ships prepared for long-range deployment. Admiral So Young, Fleet Command has approved your request for full combat authorization." Minho's eyes widened. Full combat authorization meant they were allowed to use any weapons necessary, including the ones that were supposed to be secret. "Sir, isn't that a bit much for a rescue mission?" "Captain," Admiral So Young said, "we're not just going there to rescue the Volani. We're going there to send a message to this Krex Empire and anyone else who might be watching. The message is simple. Attacking peaceful civilizations is no longer acceptable." Strategic analyst Kyung Ho, who had been quietly reviewing intelligence reports, looked up from his workstation. "Admiral, I've been studying what little information we have about the Krex Empire. Based on the Volani description, they operate with overwhelming force and take no prisoners. They've conquered at least 15 different civilizations in the past 3 years. And now they're going to learn what happens when they pick the wrong fight," So Young replied. Fleet Commander Dong Hyun activated the main display, showing a tactical map of their planned route to Sector 847. "We'll be traveling through several systems where other civilizations might observe us. This will be the first time most of them see a human fleet in action." "Are we ready for that level of exposure?" Minho asked. "We don't have a choice," So Young said. "The time for hiding is over. If we're going to help the Volani, we need to show our real strength. And if other species see us as a threat because of it, then we'll deal with that problem when it comes." Communications Officer Ha Na received an incoming message on her console. "Admiral, I'm getting reports from our monitoring stations. Several alien civilizations have detected our fleet movements. The Zephyrian Trade Union is asking for confirmation that humans actually possess military spacecraft. What should I tell them? Hana asked. Tell them they'll have their answer soon enough, So Young replied. Engineer Wu Jin entered the briefing room, carrying technical specifications for the fleet's newest weapons systems. Admiral, all ships have been equipped with the new plasma, torpedoes and quantum barrier shields. If this Krex Empire tries to fight us using conventional weapons, they're going to be very surprised. Minho looked at the technical data and whistled softly. The weapons Wu Jin described were far more advanced than anything he had seen in the standard Galactic Council databases. Where did we develop this technology? We've been working on it for decades, Wu Jin explained. While other civilizations were busy with politics and trade, we focused on making sure we could defend ourselves against any threat. Admiral So Young walked to the main window, looking out at the assembled fleet. Hundreds of ships floated in perfect formation, ready to jump to hyperspace at her command. Each vessel represented years of secret development and preparation. Captain Minho, I want you to understand something, she said without turning around. For 50 years, humanity has been watching the galaxy from the shadows. We've seen civilizations rise and fall. We've watched empires conquer and destroy peaceful species. And we've prepared for the day when we would have to step forward and say enough. And that day is today? Minho asked. That day is today, So Young confirmed. The Villani asked for help, and we're going to give it to them. But more than that, we're going to show the galaxy that humanity is no longer hiding. Fleet Commander Dong Hyun checked his chronometer. All ships report ready. For departure, Admiral. Then let's go introduce ourselves to our new neighbors, So Young said. I have a feeling this is going to be a very interesting first contact. As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, none of them knew that their departure was being monitored by dozens of alien intelligence services. Across the galaxy, emergency meetings were being called as civilizations tried to understand how a supposedly primitive species had managed to build one of the largest military fleets anyone had ever seen. The rescue mission to save the Villani was about to become something much bigger than anyone expected. High Counselor Yalman paced nervously across the bridge of the Villani command ship Bright Hope. It had been 4 days since Ambassador Thelana sent the emergency signal, and they had received no response. The Krex Empire fleet was now less than 2 days away from their home system, and hope was fading fast. Any word from our scouts? Yalman asked for the 10th time in an hour. Nothing yet, High Counselor, replied the communications officer. All outer monitoring stations report normal space. No signs of any incoming vessels. Thelana sat quietly in her chair, staring at the tactical display that showed the approaching Krex fleet. 3,000 ships moving like a dark cloud toward D. Everything she had ever loved. She had sent the old signal because it was their last chance, but deep down she knew no one would come. Who would risk their own ships to save strangers? High Counselor, the sensor operator called out suddenly. I'm detecting hyperspace disturbances at the edge of the system. Something big is coming. Yalman rushed to the sensor station. How big? I'm not sure, sir. The readings are unusual. Whatever it is, it's much larger than anything in our databases. Thelana felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe someone had actually heard their call for help. She imagined a small fleet of rescue ships, perhaps 50 or 60 vessels from some distant civilization. It wouldn't be enough to stop the Krex Empire, but at least they could evacuate some of their people. Hyperspace windows opening now, the sensor operator announced. On the main screen, they could see bright flashes of light as ships emerged from hyperspace. But instead of the small rescue fleet Thelana had imagined, what appeared before them was something impossible. Hundreds of ships materialized in perfect formation, stretching across space like a metal wall. "By the ancient spirits," Yalmen whispered. "How many ships is that?" "Computer is still counting, sir," the sensor operator replied, his voice shaking. "Current count is over 200 vessels, and more are still arriving." The ships were unlike anything in the Villani databases. They had strange angular designs with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water. Their hulls were dark gray, almost black, and they moved with perfect coordination. Most disturbing of all, every sensor scan showed that they were heavily armed. "Who are they?" Thelana asked quietly. First Contact Specialist Lee Jinnah stood on the bridge of the TSS Defiance, watching the alien ships through the main view screen. The Villani vessels were beautiful in their own way, built with elegant curves and bright colors. They looked like they had been designed by artists rather than military engineers. "Captain Minho, we're receiving multiple communication attempts from the alien fleet," Communications Officer Hana reported. "They're using basic mathematical sequences and universal symbols. Standard first contact protocols. Put me through to their command vessel," Minho ordered. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at their first live alien. High Counselor Yalmen appeared on screen, his blue skin and four-fingered hands marking him as clearly non-human. His large eyes showed fear and confusion. "Unknown vessels," Yalmen said in halting Galactic Standard language. "We are the Villani Coalition. We sent a distress signal asking for assistance. Who are you, and how did you build such a fleet?" Lee Jinnah stepped forward. She had trained for this moment her entire career, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of speaking to an alien for the first time. "High Counselor Yalmen," she said carefully, "I am First Contact Specialist Lee Jinnah of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your emergency signal and have come to offer assistance." Yalmen's confusion was obvious. "Terran? I don't recognize that species name. What sector are you from?" "Are from Earth, in what you call the Sol system," Jinnah replied. On the Villani command ship, Ambassador Thelana quickly accessed their galactic databases. After a few moments, she looked up with even more confusion. "High Counselor," she said, quietly. "According to our records, the Sol system is inhabited by a primitive species called humans. They're classified as pre-space flight with basic tool-making capabilities." Yalmen looked back at the screen, where he could see the massive human fleet floating in perfect formation behind the alien woman. "I think our databases might be wrong." Captain Minho joined Jinnah on screen. "High Counselor, we understand your confusion. We prefer to keep a low profile in galactic affairs, but your distress signal indicated that your people face extinction. We couldn't ignore that." "You came here to help us?" Yalmen asked, hardly believing it. "That's correct," Minho replied. "Tell us about this Krex Empire." Thelana moved to where Yalmen could see her. "The Krex Empire has been conquering this entire sector for 3 years. They have over 3,000 ships and they take no prisoners. They destroy everything in their path." "When will they arrive?" Jinnah asked. "Less than 2 days," Thelana replied. "We appreciate your offer of help, but even with your fleet, we're still outnumbered 15 to 1. Perhaps you could help evacuate our civilians instead?" Captain Minho smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "High Counselor, I think you misunderstand the situation. We didn't come here to evacuate anyone. We came here to stop the Krex Empire." Meanwhile, far across the system, Krek's warlord Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Crusher. His reptilian features showed amusement as he reviewed the latest intelligence reports. "So the Villani found some allies," he said to his tactical officer. "How many ships?" "Scouts report approximately 250 vessels, Warlord," the officer replied. "They appear to be from a previously unknown species calling themselves Terrans." Vextar laughed, a harsh sound that made his bridge crew nervous. 200 ships? The Villani must be truly desperate if they think such a small force can challenge the might of the Krek's empire. He activated his personal communication device and sent a message to his fleet commanders. "Prepare for battle in 36 hours. We'll destroy these Terran fools first, then finish the Villani as planned. Make sure to capture some of their ships intact. I want to study their technology before we add it to our own." Back on the Villani command ship, High Counselor Yalmen was still trying to process what was happening. A species that supposedly didn't even have spaceflight had arrived with a massive military fleet to fight an empire that had conquered dozens of civilizations. "First contact specialist Jin-Ah," he said carefully. "I must ask, how is it possible that your people developed such advanced technology without anyone knowing?" Jin-Ah exchanged a look with Captain Minho. "High Counselor, there are many things about humanity that the galaxy doesn't know. We found it's often safer to be underestimated." "But why reveal yourselves now?" Thelana asked. "Because," Captain Minho said firmly, "we believe that peaceful civilizations have the right to exist without fear. The Krek's empire's reign of terror ends here." As if summoned by his words, alarm klaxons began sounding on both the Terran and Villani ships. The long-range sensors had detected the approaching Krek's fleet, moving faster than expected. "Warlord Vextar has accelerated his attack schedule." Admiral So-Young's voice came over the communication channel. "All ships prepare for battle. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens innocent people." The first contact between humans and aliens was about to become something much more violent than anyone had planned. Krek's warlord Vextar stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. His fleet of 3,000 ships moved through space like a dark storm, ready to sweep away everything in their path. The Iron Crusher alone was larger than most space stations, bristling with weapons that had destroyed countless worlds. "Report on the enemy fleet," Vextar ordered his tactical officer. "The Terrans have 247 ships arranged in defensive formation around the Villani home system," the officer replied. "Our scouts confirm they're using unknown technology, but their vessels are significantly smaller than ours." Vextar's reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile. "Smaller ships mean weaker weapons and lighter armor. These primitives probably think they can win through clever tactics, like the Helix defense grid tried to do." His communications officer looked up from her station. "Warlord, we're receiving a transmission from the Terran fleet. They're demanding that we withdraw from Villani space immediately." "Are they?" Vextar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. "Put them on screen. I want to see what these brave little aliens look like before we destroy them." The main view screen activated, showing Captain Taman on the bridge of the Terran battleship Indomitable. The human looked calm and professional, showing no sign of fear despite facing overwhelming odds. "Krek's warlord," Taman said formally. "I am Captain Taman of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are hereby ordered to withdraw your forces from this system and cease all hostile actions against the Villani coalition." Vextar found this amusing. "Captain Taman, I am Warlord Vextar. of the Krex Empire. Your species is unknown to me, but your courage is admirable if foolish. You have exactly one chance to withdraw your ships and flee. Otherwise, I will destroy you along with the Villani." "That's not going to happen," Taymain replied calmly. "The Villani are under Terran protection now. Any attack on them will be considered an act of war against humanity." "War against humanity?" Vextar's laughter grew louder. "Little Captain, my empire has conquered dozens of species stronger than yours. Your 200 ships cannot stand against 3,000. This isn't war, it's pest control." Captain Taymain's expression didn't change. "Warlord Vextar, you're about to learn why that's the last mistake you'll ever make." The transmission ended, leaving Vextar staring at a blank screen. His tactical officer shifted nervously beside him. "Warlord, should we proceed with the attack as planned?" "Of course," Vextar replied, "but change our formation. I want the first wave to capture some of their ships intact. These Terrans might have interesting technology we can study before we finish conquering this sector." Aboard the Indomitable, Captain Taymain turned to his tactical officer. "What's our status?" "All ships report ready for combat, sir," the officer replied. "Wing Commander Boram's fighter squadrons are standing by for launch." "Good," Taymain said. "Signal Admiral So Young. Tell her the Krex fleet will be in weapons range in 20 minutes. Engineer Wu Jin's voice came over the communication system from the engine room. "Captain, the quantum barrier shields are at full power. All weapon systems are charged and ready." Taymain nodded. "Excellent work. Now let's show these Krex what human engineering can do." On the Krex flagship, Warlord Vextar watched as his massive fleet closed in on the smaller Terran force. The humans had arranged their ships in a strange formation that he didn't recognize, but it didn't matter. No amount of tactical cleverness could overcome such a massive difference in numbers. "All ships, begin the attack," Vextar ordered. "First wave, disable their engines and weapons. Second wave, prepare boarding parties. I want prisoners for interrogation." The Krex fleet opened fire with thousands of energy weapons, filling space with deadly light. Plasma bolts and laser beams crossed the distance between the fleets in seconds, striking the Terran ships with enough force to destroy small moons. But something impossible happened. The human ships simply absorbed the attacks. The quantum barrier shields that Engineer Wu Jin had installed created shimmering energy fields around each vessel, deflecting the Krex weapons like they were toy lasers. Not a single Terran ship was damaged. "What?" Vextar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. "How are they doing that?" "Unknown, Warlord," his tactical officer replied, panic creeping into his voice. "Our weapons are having no effect. Their shield technology is far beyond anything in our databases." Before Vextar could respond, the Terran fleet returned fire. Captain Taymain watched the tactical display as his ships unleashed their first salvo. "All batteries, fire at will." The Terran plasma torpedoes were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of simple energy beams, they fired contained balls of stellar matter that burned at temperatures found in the cores of stars. When they struck the Krex ships, the results were devastating. The first Krex vessel to be hit simply vanished in a flash of light. The plasma torpedo had completely destroyed its molecular structure, leaving nothing but glowing particles. The second ship lasted slightly longer, but its armor melted like ice in a furnace before the entire vessel exploded. "Impossible," Vextar whispered as he watched his ships die. "No weapon should be that powerful." Wing Commander Boram's fighter squadrons launched from the Terran carriers, adding to the destruction. The small human fighters moved with incredible speed and precision, dodging the desperate return fire from the Krex fleet while delivering their own deadly attacks. "Sir," the Krex communications officer called out, "we're receiving emergency signals from all forward units. They're requesting immediate reinforcements." "Send the second wave," Vextar ordered, though doubt was beginning to creep into his voice. "All ships, maximum firepower, concentrate fire on their largest vessels." The second wave of Krex ships charged forward, pouring everything they had into their attack. But the results were the same. The human shields deflected their weapons effortlessly, while the Terran return fire continued to destroy ship after ship. Engineer Wu Jin monitored the battle from his station in the Indomitable's engine room. "Captain, shield strength is still at 98%. The Krex weapons are barely making a dent." "What about our ammunition supplies?" Taemin asked. "Plenty of torpedoes remaining, sir. At this rate, we could fight for hours without running low." On the Krex flagship, the situation was becoming desperate. In less than 30 minutes of fighting, Vextar had already lost over 400 ships. The Terrans, meanwhile, had suffered no casualties at all. "Warlord," his tactical officer said quietly, "perhaps we should consider withdrawal. This enemy is far stronger than we anticipated." Vextar's pride wouldn't let him admit defeat so easily. "Never! The Krex Empire doesn't retreat from primitive aliens. Send the third wave and prepare the dreadnoughts for close combat." But as he watched more of his ships disappear under the relentless Terran assault, Vextar began to realize that he had made a terrible mistake. These weren't primitive aliens at all. They were something far more dangerous than anything his empire had ever encountered. Captain Taemin studied the battle reports with satisfaction. "Signal Admiral So Young, the Krex attack has been completely neutralized. Enemy casualties are approaching 50%, while we remain at full strength. What are your orders regarding the remaining Krex ships?" his tactical officer asked. "Continue the attack," Taemin replied firmly. "Make sure they understand that this is what happens when you threaten peaceful civilizations. The battle that Warlord Vextar had expected to be a simple conquest was turning into the worst military disaster in Krex history, and it was only the beginning. The news of the Terran intervention spread across the galaxy faster than anyone thought possible. In the crystal halls of the Galactic Council on Centralis Prime, emergency sessions were being called as representatives from dozens of species tried to understand what had just happened in Sector 847. Council Speaker Mordain, a tall being with silver skin and 6 arms, stood before the assembled delegates with a look of barely controlled panic. "Fellow representatives, we face an unprecedented situation. A species we classified as primitive has just destroyed half of the Krex Empire's main fleet in less than 6 hours. The council chamber erupted in nervous chatter. Representative Kelthar of the hegemony raised one of his tentacles. "Speaker Mordain, our intelligence services are reporting impossible things. The humans used weapons that our scientists say shouldn't exist." "What do you mean?" asked Representative Ithara from the far reaches. "Their plasma torpedoes burn at stellar core temperatures," Kelthar explained. "That kind of energy containment should be impossible for any species. And their shields apparently make them completely immune to conventional weapons." In the secure communications center beneath the council building, intelligence analyst Vel Nari worked frantically to gather more information about the human fleet. She had been monitoring galactic communications for 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for this. "Ma'am," her assistant called out, "we're receiving reports from observer ships near the battle zone. The humans aren't just winning, they're completely dominating the fight. The Kreks can't even damage their ships. Velnari pulled up tactical data from the battle. What she saw made her heart skip a beat. The human formation was moving with perfect coordination, their ships working together like a single massive organism. Every shot they fired found its target. Every movement was calculated for maximum efficiency. "This isn't possible," she whispered. No species develops this kind of military capability without someone noticing. Meanwhile, in a hidden base at the edge of known space, ancient beings who had remained silent for millennia were stirring. The eldest, creatures so old that most species had forgotten they ever existed, monitored galactic affairs from the shadows. They had been watching the rise and fall of civilizations for millions of years, rarely interfering in the affairs of younger species. But the emergence of humanity was different. Elder Keth Moran, whose crystalline form had existed since before the first galactic wars, activated the ancient communication network that connected all Elder bases across the galaxy. "My siblings, the time of hiding may be ending. The humans have revealed themselves, and they are not what we expected." "What do you mean?" asked Elder Shantara from the opposite side of the galaxy. "Their technology," Keth Moran explained, "it's not based on any known scientific principles. They've developed something entirely new, something that makes them incredibly dangerous." On the planet Valani Prime, Lieutenant Colonel Sunmi led her ground forces through the evacuation centers where millions of Valani civilians waited in terror. The blue-skinned aliens looked at the human soldiers with a mixture of gratitude and fear. "Colonel," Sergeant Pack called out, "the local authorities want to know if we're planning to establish a permanent base here." Sunmi considered the question carefully. "Tell them we're here as long as they need us, but also make it clear that we're not conquerors. We're protectors." A young Valani child approached Sunmi, offering her a small flower from the local gardens. The gesture was simple, but it reminded the colonel why they were fighting. These people deserved to live in peace, free from the terror of empires like the Kreks. "Thank you," Sunmi said softly, accepting the flower. "Don't worry. The bad ships won't hurt your family anymore." Back in space, strategic analyst Kyung-ho studied the battlefield from his station aboard the command ship. The Kreks fleet was in full retreat now, with less than 1,000 ships remaining from their original force of 3,000. But something about their withdrawal patterns worried him. "Admiral So Young," he called out, "I'm seeing unusual communication. Traffic from the fleeing Kreks ships. They're sending detailed reports about our capabilities to destinations outside this sector." "What kind of destinations?" So Young asked. "Unknown, ma'am, but the signals are being sent to at least a dozen different star systems. It looks like they're warning someone about us." Admiral So Young frowned. "Or asking for help. Kyung-ho, I want you to track those signals. Find out who the Kreks Empire is talking to." On the Valani command ship, High Counselor Yalmen watched the human fleet with growing amazement. What had started as a desperate last stand was turning into the most one-sided military victory he had ever witnessed. "Ambassador Thelana," he said quietly, "I think we need to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the galaxy." "What do you mean?" she asked. "Look at them." Yalmen pointed to the tactical display showing the human ships. "They're not just winning this battle. They're making it look easy. A species doesn't develop this kind of power overnight. They've been hiding their true capabilities for decades, maybe centuries." Thelana nodded slowly. "But why? Why hide such strength? Maybe because they knew that if other species learned how powerful they really were, we'd all be too afraid to coexist peacefully." As if to prove his point, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Ancient species that had remained hidden were suddenly appearing, offering alliance to humanity. Others were mobilizing their own fleets, preparing for what they saw as an inevitable war with the new galactic superpower. The Zephyrian Trade Union immediately declared neutrality and requested formal diplomatic relations with Earth. The Andorian Republic began emergency military preparations, fearing that humanity might turn aggressive after their victory. The mysterious Shadow Fleet, which had operated in secret for generations, sent an encrypted message offering to share intelligence about other hidden threats in the galaxy. Dr. Yeon-Su, the Terran fleet's xenoarchaeologist, studied these responses from her research lab aboard the science vessel Discovery. "Admiral, I'm seeing patterns here that suggest many species have been hiding their true capabilities just like we have." "Explain," Admiral So Young replied over the communication channel. The speed of these responses, the sophistication of the technology being revealed, none of this should be possible if these species were really at the development levels they claimed. "I think humanity's emergence has triggered a galaxy-wide revelation." Intelligence Officer J1, who had been monitoring encrypted communications across multiple star systems, suddenly looked up from his workstation. "Admiral, you need to hear this. I've intercepted a message from something called the Crimson Hegemony. They're offering military support to anyone willing to fight against human expansion." "Never heard of them," So Young replied. "Neither had I until an hour ago. But based on their communication patterns, they control at least 50 star systems and have been operating in complete secrecy for over a century. The battle in Sector 847 was supposed to be a simple rescue mission. Instead, it was revealing that the galaxy was far more crowded and dangerous than anyone had realized. Dozens of hidden civilizations were emerging from the shadows, some seeking alliance with humanity, others preparing for war. As the last Krex ships fled the system, Admiral So Young realized that saving the Villani had been the easy part. Now, they had to navigate a galaxy that was suddenly full of surprises, where ancient powers were awakening, and everyone was trying to figure out whether humanity was a potential ally or the greatest threat they had ever faced. The real test was just beginning. Dr. Yeon-Su stood in her laboratory aboard the research vessel Discovery, surrounded by holographic displays showing archaeological data from dozens of star systems. For the past 3 days, she had been analyzing artifacts and ruins that other species had dismissed as unimportant. What she found changed everything they thought they knew about galactic history. "Intelligence Officer J1, you need to see this," she called out over the communication system. J1 arrived within minutes, carrying a data pad full of intercepted alien communications. "Doctor, what have you found?" Yeon-Su activated the main display, showing a series of ancient ruins on a planet in the outer rim. "These structures are on Kepler 442b, which the Galactic Council claims has never been inhabited by advanced life. But look at this." The hologram zoomed in on carved symbols that covered the walls of the ruins. "Those markings are in ancient Terran script. Not just similar to it, identical to writing systems we used over 2,000 years ago." Jae-won studied the images carefully. "That's impossible. Humans only achieved interstellar flight 50 years ago." "That's what we told everyone," Yeon-Su replied with a knowing smile. "But these ruins suggest we've been traveling between stars for much longer than anyone realizes." She pulled up more data, showing similar findings from 6 other star systems. "J1, I think humanity has been exploring the galaxy for centuries, maybe millennia. We've just been very good at hiding it." Admiral Chang Min's voice came over. The communication system from his flagship, The Eternal Vigilance. Dr. Yonsu, Intelligence Officer J1, please report to my ready room immediately. We need to discuss your findings. When they arrived, they found Chang Min studying a series of classified documents that had been sealed for over a century. The Admiral was one of the oldest officers in the Terran fleet, a man who had dedicated his life to protecting humanity's secrets. Doctor, your archaeological research has uncovered something we hoped would remain hidden for a few more decades, Chang Min said seriously. It's time you learned the truth about humanity's real history. He activated a secure holographic projector showing a timeline that stretched back over 3,000 years. Humanity achieved interstellar flight in the year 2157, not 2975 as we tell other species. For over 800 years, we've been quietly exploring the galaxy, studying other civilizations, and preparing for the day when we would have to reveal ourselves. Yunsu felt her breath catch. 800 years? But why hide for so long? Because, Changmin explained, early in our exploration, we discovered that the galaxy is a very dangerous place. We found the remains of dozens of civilizations that had been destroyed by more aggressive species. We learned that being seen as weak and primitive was often the only way to survive. Jae-won looked at the classified timeline. Admiral, some of these dates show human presence in systems that were supposedly conquered by other empires. Were we watching when those civilizations fell? Chang Min's expression grew sad. We were, and each time we had to make the difficult choice between revealing ourselves and letting innocent people die. For 8 centuries, we chose to remain, hidden in hope that someday we would be strong enough to make a difference. And now we are? Yonsu asked. Now we are, Chang Min confirmed. The fleet you see today represents 800 years of careful development. While other species were busy with politics and trade wars, we focused on making sure that when we finally stepped forward, no one could threaten us or the people we choose to protect. The holographic display changed to show Earth's hidden infrastructure. Massive shipyards in the asteroid belt, research stations in the outer planets, and deep space monitoring networks that had been observing the galaxy for centuries. My God, Jae-won whispered. How many people know about this? On Earth? Maybe 10,000, Chang Min replied. We've kept this secret through multiple generations, passing the knowledge only to those who needed it to do their jobs. Dr. Yonsu studied the data with growing amazement. Admiral, this explains so much. The advanced technology, the perfect coordination of our fleet, the fact that we seem to know exactly how other species think and fight. We've been watching them for 800 years, Chang Min said. We know their strengths, their weaknesses, and their histories better than they know themselves. Meanwhile, aboard the command ship Resolution, Admiral So Young was dealing with the political aftermath of their revelation. Diplomatic communications were flooding in from across the galaxy as species tried to understand humanity's true position in galactic affairs. Admiral, Communications Officer Hana reported, the Galactic Council is demanding an immediate explanation for our military capabilities. They're threatening to declare us a hostile force if we don't provide full disclosure of our technology. What did you tell them? So Young asked. I told them we'd be happy to discuss diplomatic relations once they stopped threatening us, Hana replied with a slight smile. Fleet Commander Dong Hyun entered the bridge carrying new intelligence reports. Admiral, we're getting responses from civilizations we've never heard of before. Apparently, our demonstration against the Krex Empire has convinced several hidden species to reveal themselves. Good or bad? So Young asked. Mixed, Dong Hyun replied. The Stellar Federation wants to form a mutual defense pact. The Iron Brotherhood is offering to share military technology, but the Void Hunters are demanding that we withdraw from all systems outside our home territory. So Young considered this information carefully. It sounds like the galaxy is more crowded than anyone realized. How many hidden civilizations are we talking about? At least 30 that we know of so far, Dong-hyun said. And more are revealing themselves every day. Back in the laboratory, Dr. Yeon-soo was making another disturbing discovery. Admiral Chang-min, I found something else. These ancient human ruins, they're not the oldest structures on these planets. What do you mean? Chang-min asked. There are older ruins underneath, them built by species that existed long before humans arrived. But those civilizations are all extinct now. Every single one of them was destroyed by the same pattern of conquest and genocide that we've been watching for centuries. Jaewon looked up from his analysis of intercepted communications. Admiral, I'm seeing similar patterns in current intelligence. The Krex Empire wasn't the only aggressive force out there. There are at least 6 major military powers that specialize in conquering and destroying peaceful civilizations. Chang-min activated another classified file. That's why we've been preparing for so long. We knew that eventually we would have to choose between remaining hidden and watching innocents die, or revealing ourselves and becoming a target for every aggressive empire in the galaxy. And the Vellani distress signal forced our hand, Yeon-soo said. Exactly. We couldn't let another peaceful civilization be destroyed when we had the power to stop it. As they talked, reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. The revelation of humanity's true capabilities was triggering a massive reorganization of galactic politics. Ancient alliances were dissolving, new ones were forming, and everyone was trying to figure out where they stood in relation to the new superpower that had emerged from nowhere. Engineer Wu Jin's voice came over the communication system. Admiral Chang-min, we're receiving a priority message from Earth Command. They're authorizing the release of our next-generation technology to the fleet. What kind of technology? Chang-min asked. The kind we hoped we'd never have to use, Wu Jin replied grimly. The secret was out. After 800 years of hiding, humanity had revealed itself as one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. But with that revelation came new dangers and responsibilities that would test everything they had worked to build. Commander Seung-ho watched from the bridge of his destroyer as the last Krex battleship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The massive vessel, which had terrorized 3 star systems just weeks ago, disappeared into glowing debris that would drift in space forever as a monument to the Empire's defeat. That's the last of them, sir, his tactical officer reported. The entire Krex Third Fleet has been eliminated. Seung-ho nodded grimly. Signal Admiral So Young. The Helix sector is now completely clear of Krex forces. No survivors detected. The Yo. Destruction of the Krex Empire's military might had taken less than 2 weeks. What had once been the most feared fighting force in this part of the galaxy was now nothing but wreckage floating in the void. The speed and completeness of their defeat sent shockwaves across every inhabited world. On the planet Centralis Prime, the Galactic Council was in emergency session for the 5th consecutive day. Council Speaker Mordain looked exhausted as he tried to maintain order among the increasingly panicked representatives. Fellow delegates, Mordain said, his 6 arms gesturing for calm. We must accept the new reality. The species we knew as humanity has revealed itself to be the most powerful military force the galaxy has ever seen. Representative Kelthar of the hegemony waved his tentacles frantically. Speaker, this changes everything. If humans can destroy the entire Krex Empire in 2 weeks, what's to stop them from conquering all of us? Perhaps, suggested Representative Ithera, We should ask them what they want instead of assuming the worst. The chamber erupted in arguments as different species debated whether humanity represented salvation or the galaxy's greatest threat. Some wanted immediate surrender. Others called for a preemptive strike while there was still time. A few brave souls suggested actually trying to communicate with the terrifying new superpower. Meanwhile, Diplomatic Corps Chief Nari sat in her office aboard the flagship Resolution, reading through hundreds of requests for meetings, alliance, proposals, and surrender offers from across the galaxy. The messages ranged from respectful to desperate to barely contained threats. "Chief Nari," her assistant called out. "Priority message from the Andromedan Collective. They're offering to share their most advanced technology in exchange for a non-aggression pact." "Add it to the pile," Nari replied tiredly. "What's the current count?" 237 formal diplomatic requests in the past 3 days. Everything from trade agreements to military alliances to requests for protection against other threats. Nari rubbed her temples. "And how many actual threats?" 43 species have either declared us enemies or demanded that we withdraw from all systems outside Sol. The Iron Circle is mobilizing their fleet for what they call defensive action. The Shadow Lords are threatening to destroy any human ship that enters their territory. "Wonderful," Nari muttered. "We save one species from genocide, and suddenly we're the galaxy's biggest problem." Admiral So Young entered the office, carrying intelligence reports from across the galaxy. "Chief, Nari, we need to discuss our next moves carefully. Every decision we make now will shape humanity's relationship with the galaxy for centuries." "What are you thinking?" Nari asked. "We need to be clear about our intentions," So Young replied. "We're not conquerors, but we also can't let aggressive empires like the Kreks continue to exist. The galaxy needs to understand that humanity will protect peaceful civilizations and destroy those who threaten them." On the Vellani homeworld, High Counselor Yalmen stood before a massive crowd of his people who had gathered to celebrate their liberation. The blue-skinned aliens looked up at him with hope for the first time in months. "My people," Yalmen announced. "The terror that stalked our worlds is gone forever. The Kreks Empire has been completely destroyed by our new allies from Earth." The crowd cheered, but Yalmen could see uncertainty in their eyes. They were grateful to be alive, but they also understood that their entire civilization now existed, at the mercy of beings more powerful than they could comprehend. Ambassador Thelana joined him on the platform. "High Counselor, the humans have requested a formal meeting to discuss long-term security arrangements. They want to establish what they call a protection agreement." "Do we have a choice?" Yalmen asked quietly. "I don't think anyone in the galaxy has a choice anymore," Thelana replied. "The humans are offering protection to anyone who wants it, but they're also making it clear that aggressive behavior will not be tolerated." Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place on thousands of worlds. The complete destruction of the Kreks Empire had proven that humanity possessed the power to reshape galactic civilization according to their own vision of how things should work. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Myung-Soo stood in the Strategic Command Center, watching as reports flooded in from every corner of known space. The planet that had hidden from galactic politics for 8 centuries was now the center of attention for every intelligence service in the galaxy. "Admiral," strategic analyst Kyung-ho called out, "we're detecting massive fleet movements in the Outer Rim. The Crimson Hegemony is mobilizing over 5,000 ships. The Void Hunters are abandoning their usual territory and massing near the Galactic Core." "Are they working together?" Myung-Soo asked. "Unknown, sir. but both groups are moving toward regions where human ships have been operating. It looks like they're planning some kind of coordinated response to our expansion. Chief Diplomat Eun Jung entered the command center carrying formal documents from dozens of worlds. Admiral, we have a problem. The Galactic Council is demanding that we submit to their authority and accept limitations on our military activities. And if we refuse? Myung-soo asked. They're threatening to declare us an outlaw civilization and authorize military action against human interests. Myung-soo looked at the tactical displays showing the positions of various alien fleets. Yoon Jung, please send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them that humanity appreciates their concern, but we don't recognize their authority over our actions. That's going to be seen as a declaration of independence from galactic law, Yoon Jung warned. Good, Myung-soo replied, because that's exactly what it is. Meanwhile, in hidden bases across the galaxy, ancient species that had remained neutral for millennia were making their own preparations. The eldest, being so old that most civilizations had forgotten they existed, activated communication networks that hadn't been used for thousands of years. The young species has grown strong, Elder Kethmoran observed from his crystal sanctuary. Perhaps too strong. Should we intervene? Asked Elder Shantara. Not yet, but we must be prepared. If humanity proves to be as dangerous as they are, powerful, we may have no choice but to act. Dr. Yan-Su, still analyzing archaeological data from her laboratory, made another disturbing discovery. Admiral Chang Min, I found evidence of at least 12 advanced civilizations that were destroyed over the past 10,000 years. Each one was eliminated shortly after they became too powerful for other species to control. What are you suggesting? Chang Min asked. I'm suggesting that the galaxy has a pattern of destroying civilizations that become too successful. And now that pattern might be focused on us. As if to confirm her fears, long-range sensors detected massive energy, signatures at the edge of known space. Something very large and very old was stirring in the galactic darkness, responding to humanity's emergence just as it had responded to other threats throughout history. The galaxy's new reality was becoming clear. Humanity had revealed itself as a superpower, but in doing so, they had awakened forces that had slept for centuries. The easy victory over the Krex Empire was just the beginning of a much larger and more dangerous game. Ambassador Thelana stood in her private quarters aboard the Villani command ship, staring out at the human fleet that still protected their system. 3 months had passed since the Krex Empire's destruction, but the massive Terran vessels remained, a constant reminder of how completely their world had changed. A soft chime announced a visitor. High Counselor Yalman entered, carrying a datapad with the latest reports from across the galaxy. The numbers are final, Yalman said quietly. Since the humans revealed themselves, 47 civilizations have requested protection agreements. 23 others have declared war on humanity, and 16 ancient species that nobody even knew existed have emerged from hiding. Thelana turned from the window. And us? What have we become? We've become the first, Yalman replied. The first species to be saved by humanity. The first to accept their protection, and probably the first to realize what that really means. Through the viewport, they could see the TSS Defiance conducting patrol sweeps around their home planet. The human ship moved with deadly grace, its weapons capable of destroying entire fleets. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't sent that signal? Thelana asked. Every day, Yalman admitted. We would be dead, along with billions of other innocents across the galaxy. The Krex Empire would still be conquering and destroying. But the galaxy would also still think humans were primitive creatures who couldn't build a simple spacecraft. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Myung-Soo walked through the newly constructed Strategic Command Complex, a massive facility that had been built in just 2 months to coordinate humanity's expanding presence across the galaxy. Holographic displays showed the positions of human fleets in over 50 star systems. Status report, Myung-Soo requested from his aide. Sir, we now have permanent bases in 12 sectors. The Third Fleet is establishing a forward command post in the former Krex territory. The Seventh Fleet is responding to 3 separate requests for assistance against pirate activities. And the 12th Fleet is monitoring the movements of something called the Ancient Conclave. Myung-Soo paused at a display showing the galactic political map. Large sections that had been marked as unknown or uninhabited 3 months ago were now colored to represent dozens of previously hidden civilizations. It's remarkable, he said. For 800 years, we thought we were alone in our caution. Turns out, half the galaxy was hiding just like we were. Chief Diplomat Yun Jung approached with a concerned expression. Admiral, we need to discuss the Galactic Council's latest response to our expansion. What are they saying now? Myung-Soo asked. They've officially declared humanity a galactic threat and are calling for a united response to contain our influence. 46 member species have agreed to participate in something called the Containment Coalition. Myung-Soo studied the list of species involved. Most of these are minor powers who couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. Are there any real threats among them? The hegemony has a substantial fleet, Eun-jung replied, and the Stellar Federation controls some important trade routes. But honestly, Admiral, none of them have technology that can match ours. That's what worries me, Myung-Soo said. Desperate people do stupid things. And right now, a lot of species are feeling very desperate. Meanwhile, in the Deep Space Monitoring Station where this had all began, Commander Hyun-woo sat in his office reading reports from across the galaxy. The quiet listening post had become one of the most important intelligence-gathering facilities in human space. Commander, his communications officer called out, priority message from the Andromedan Collective. They're requesting immediate assistance against something they call the Devourers. Hyun-woo had heard whispers about the Devourers from several sources. They were supposedly an ancient species that consumed entire star systems, turning planets into raw materials for their vast fleets. Most civilizations considered them a myth. Location? Hyun-woo asked. The Andromeda Galaxy's edge, sir. About 6 months' travel from our current position. Send the report to Fleet Command, Hyun-woo ordered. It looks like our responsibilities are expanding beyond just this galaxy. On the bridge of the Resolution, Admiral So Young was dealing with a different kind of problem. Representatives from the Volani Coalition had requested a meeting to discuss what they called independence concerns. Ambassador Thelana appeared on the main screen, looking nervous but determined. Admiral So Young, my people are grateful for your protection, but we're concerned about becoming dependent on human military power. What exactly are you asking? So, Young replied. We want to know if the Volani Coalition will ever be allowed to govern itself again, or if we're now permanently under human control. So, Young considered the question carefully. Ambassador, humanity has no interest in governing other species. We stepped forward to stop genocide, not to build an empire. But we also can't allow the return of threats like the Krex Empire. So, What does that mean for us? Thelana asked. It means you're free to govern yourselves however you choose, as long as you don't threaten others. We'll maintain a small fleet in your system for protection, but your people make their own decisions about everything else. Dr. Yan Su, still analyzing data from her archaeological research, made a discovery that changed everything they thought they knew about galactic history. Admiral Changmin, you need to see this immediately. Changmin arrived in her laboratory within minutes. What have you found, Doctor? Evidence that this has all happened before, Yan Su said, activating a holographic display. 3 times in galactic history, a single species has emerged as a dominant power. Each time, it triggered a massive conflict that reshaped civilization. And what happened to those species? Changmin asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The first 2 were completely destroyed by coalitions of other species who feared their power. The third, well, they're what we now call the eldest. They survived by withdrawing from galactic affairs and hiding for millions of years. Changmin studied the historical data with growing concern. So we have 2 choices. Fight a war against most of the galaxy, or disappear like the eldest did. There might be a third option, Yan Su said. We could try something that's never been attempted before. Instead of conquering or hiding, we could try to actually lead. Explain. What? If we use our power not to control other species but to protect them? What if we become the guardians of galactic peace instead of just another empire? Meanwhile, in the hidden depths of space, the ancient conclave was making its own preparations. Elder Keth Moran stood before a gathering of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, creatures whose existence was known only in the oldest myths. The humans have made their choice, he announced. They will not withdraw like the eldest did. They intend to remain active in galactic affairs. Then they must be stopped, declared Elder Vashatar, whose species had once ruled a quarter of the galaxy. History shows us what happens when young species grow too powerful. Perhaps, Keth Moran replied, but these humans are different. They had the power to conquer the galaxy 3 months ago, but instead they chose to protect the weak. Maybe it's time we tried a different approach. The debate that followed would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy. Some of the ancient conclave wanted to destroy humanity before they became too dangerous. Others wanted to test them, to see if they truly were different from the empires that had come before. Back on Valani Prime, Ambassador Thelana stood before a monument that had been built to honor the human intervention. The inscription read, "To the fleet that came when no one else would." A human officer, Lieutenant Kim from the Defiance, approached the monument carrying flowers from his homeworld. Strange, isn't it? Thelana said. 3 months ago, we sent out a cry for help, hoping someone, anyone, would come to save us. And now? Lieutenant Kim asked. Now we realize that our call for help didn't just bring salvation. It brought the emergence of a new galactic order. We asked for rescue, and instead we got revolution. Lieutenant Kim placed the flowers at the base of the monument. My grandmother always said to be careful what you wish for. As the sun set over the Valani capital, both aliens looked up at the stars where human ships continued their patrols. The galaxy had fundamentally changed in ways no one could have predicted. The desperate distress signal that was meant to save one species had instead awakened a sleeping giant that now stood as guardian over all peaceful civilizations. Whether that was salvation or doom remained to be seen. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again.